All right. Well, welcome everyone to the first traffic calming meeting for Enchanted Circle. My name is David Greaves. I'm an engineer who works with NDOT on the traffic calming program. We're meeting here virtually on WebEx tonight, June 2nd, 2025 at 6:30 p.m. So the agenda for tonight consists of a few things. We're going to start off with a program overview. And then I'd like to hear from you all about what kind of experiences you're having on the street, maybe find out why you were compelled to apply for traffic calming, and then talk about a couple options that we might have to address those concerns. We'll then move on to reviewing the toolbox of traffic calming options, look at kind of our first stab at a preliminary design concept for the street, just to sort of get the ideas flowing. Certainly doesn't need to be what we've drafted so far. And then afterwards, we're going to discuss, the next steps in the project. For anyone who may be watching this recording after the fact, want to make sure everyone's aware that we're trying something new this year in having a live survey open from the time we sent the mailers out to you all through balloting. So for anyone who's watching the recording or anyone who's in the meeting now, feel free to either scan the QR code that's currently on the screen or type in Engage.Nashville.gov/traffic-calming into your browser. And that's a place that you can also leave comments, throw out ideas, raise concerns, before or after this meeting. So jumping into the program overview. Oh. Hello. Great. So jumping into the program overview, we're going to start with asking, what is traffic calming? This is a neighborhood street traffic calming program focusing on residential streets exclusively. So we're not looking at larger arterial roads or certainly anything bigger than that. We do favor physical solutions to encourage lower speeds over significant lengths. And, one of the primary goals of this program is speed reduction. So we'll talk about kind of why that's important in a second. I see we've got a question. So I'll take a pause now, and then we'll pause a couple more times throughout the presentation to answer. So yes, Daniel. Daniel, you're currently muted, so I'm not able to hear you.
Okay, now it's saying I'm unmuted.
Yep, I can hear you now.
Okay, you can hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. I have a couple questions and other, but let me just ask my basic question. Now, I live at 4321 Enchanted Circle, which is at the corner of 3912 Drake's Branch Road, depending on what address. Now, I work over on West Hamilton at Clarksville Highway. I have to drive over 10 stops to get to work. How many are you suggesting we're going to put on Enchanted Circle? Because to me, that is a lot of stop to have to drive. I have to drive from my house to West Hamilton is 4 stops, and from West Hamilton to Clarksville Highway is another 6 stops. When do we have too many? Because that's a lot of stops. And are we looking at the same number of stops for Enchanted Circle?
Probably, well, almost certainly fewer than that. I've got a rough concept drawn up that we'll present in a little while. I don't off the top of my head remember how many it says, but the spacing is likely about the same, excepting the places we can't put them. So like hills, intersections, and that. But we can take a look at that in detail in a few minutes if you're willing to bear with me.
Yeah, and my question is, I'll be a little more specific because Enchanted Circle start 1 block from me at Highsdale Lane. And my question is, from Highsdale Lane over to, I think, Queen Lane, how many stops are there going to be? I mean, how many common will there be?
We'll take a look at the specific concept a little later in the meeting. I've got some info to run through before we get to that section. If you have time to stay on.
Okay.
Great. And yeah, anyone feel free to throw questions like into the chat as well if I'm running through the slides. But we'll stop a couple of times throughout to do questions if that's all right. So keeping going, there are 3 E's of traffic calming. Those are education. Is somebody speaking?
Oh, y'all already
Got education, enforcement, and engineering. Engineering here is bold and underlined because as NDOT, we have the greatest ability to affect the design of our streets. We're able to educate about speeding a little bit. Enforcement is pretty well outside of our purview. So we like to use tools that will enforce speeds at all times, not just when somebody is actively monitoring speeds on the street. Now, the reason that this program is, seeking speed reduction is because it ties directly into safety. So that's demonstrated by this infographic on the screen where if a pedestrian is hit at 25 miles an hour, they've got a pretty good chance of surviving. That'd be 89%. Now, unfortunately, that chance starts to go way down as speeds climb up. So we see at the right side of the screen, 45 miles an hour. If somebody were to be hit, they'd only have about a third of a chance of making it out alive. So Nashville has adopted Vision Zero, meaning we are seeking to prevent any deaths on our public roadways and streets. This is a really popular program that's in high demand right now. So in March of 2025, when Enchanted Circle was selected, you were selected from a pool of over 600 neighborhood streets, and we were only able to choose 25. You can get a sense of where these are occurring in the map to the right, and as you can see, they're kind of all over the county. Definitely less so the further north west you get in the more like rural areas of Davidson County, but generally most places that we have neighborhoods, we have traffic calming of some sort. This is interactive, so it can be viewed at TrafficCalming.Nashville.gov if anyone's curious. And we'll also take a look, kind of a close-up of your neighborhood in just a minute. So there are a few things in our kind of toolbox, different options we have to address speeding on Enchanted Circle Drive. But for anything that may not fall into that bucket, we want to make sure everyone is aware of Hub Nashville as a resource to request things that maybe aren't traffic calming or maybe don't even have to do with Nashville's Department of Transportation. That can be accessed by calling 311, going to hub.nashville.gov, or via their mobile app, which is a pretty user-friendly way as well. So moving on to how Enchanted Circle was selected out of that pool of 600 or so streets, we looked at 5 factors of varying weights. So the largest factor is vehicular speeds. That made up 45% of the score. Volume, that means how many drivers are driving on Enchanted Circle in a given day. We also looked at crash history to see if y'all had any crashes with vulnerable road users in the last 10 years. And then there's some scoring based on whether or not you have sidewalks and if there are any kind of walkable trip destinations in the neighborhood. So all of that gets rolled into a score that's ranked amongst every other application we have on file, and Enchanted Circle was within that top 25. A little bit of that data that we measured on Enchanted Circle was an 85th percent speed of 42 miles an hour. 85th percent speed means that 85% of people we measured were driving that speed or slower, and 15% were driving faster than 42. So that is really high. That's one of the higher speeds we've measured this cycle, and certainly faster than we would prefer people to be driving on a neighborhood street. The volume was 160 vehicles per day, and that's relatively in line with what we would expect in a neighborhood like this. It's not very high traffic wise, but made up for it in speed, certainly. And this is a relatively narrow road, so it's 22 feet wide for the most part, which is just about two average travel lanes, but not really much on the side. So we don't imagine a whole lot of people are parallel parking here, and there's not too much room to do horizontal treatments for traffic calming. And then lastly, this is a map of the project extents that were applied for. So it starts down on Hydesdale Lane, crosses Drake's Branch, crosses Kings Lane, and the last is Golden Hill Drive up there to the north. This is a zoomed in screenshot of the Nashville traffic calming tracker. So we also can see that you have a couple other applications to the west. Those are Eaton's Creek Road and Queens Lane, as well as a lot of streets that are in construction. So maybe not being built right now, but kind of in the queue, waiting to be built. So we've got Drake's Branch over here, West Hamilton Road, Fairview Drive, and Kings Lane have all been applied for and selected based on the criteria we just covered. So next we're going to talk about the toolbox and the preliminary design. But before we do that, I'd like to hang out here on this slide and just kind of hear from you all. What sorts of things are you experiencing on Enchanted Circle, and what kind of measures are you imagining would be a good solution for the problems that you face?
Repeat that question, please.
Yeah, I'm curious to know, what about Enchanted Circle compelled this group to apply for the traffic calming, and we can kind of discuss some solutions that might be appropriate.
Yeah. Let me ask you, did you consider doing a survey of people along the street to see what their options or what their thoughts are?
Yeah, so what we've done is sent out mailers to, we'll kind of go over exactly who gets those toward the end, but we'd like to hear from as many people as possible. So we've advertised that online survey once with mail. We're having this meeting that will be recorded tonight, and that survey is going to remain open. So we would love to hear from more people. I think we've got a couple of comments on there so far, but that's really what we'd like to do is kind of get a sense of what you all are looking for in a project like this.
Okay, because I didn't get the survey.
Got it. So we can take a look at the piece of mail that you might have received. Did you get an invitation to this this meeting in the mail? Like a postcard to the meeting we're on? Well, in any case, you're more than welcome to share any feedback you have here tonight or online. That's just fine, and we'll be able to get you connected with that survey, toward the end of the meeting. Does anyone else have anything to share before we talk about some of the tools that traffic calming has?
I have a question.
Sure.
If the survey come back and people didn't want it, will you still go ahead and do it?
We won't. There's a balloting process for all of these projects. We'll go over the specifics toward the end, but Yeah, if we don't have at least 2/3 of people responding saying yes, then it's a project that won't move forward.
Okay, I guess my next question is then now, who will receive the survey? Will it be homeowners on Enchanted Circle only?
That's correct. Anyone who owns a parcel of land that touches the project limits we see here.
Yeah. Now, the next question is, do you go by mailing address or by map and parcel number address?
We use the information on Metro Nashville's Register of Deeds records. So the owner's mailing address that they have listed with the city is where the mail goes to.
Well, now, and that's my question because my mailing address is 3912 Drake Branch Road, but the map and parcel, and if you go to the city, it's 4321 Enchanted Circle. So if you send it to the mailing address, I won't get it.
Got it.
So,
I
on
don't.
corner streets, and that happened on corner street. By the way, I'm a real estate broker, and I've dealt with this for years. And on corner street, there can be a different mailing address from a map and parcel address for the city. And if you send it to the mailing address, and very frankly, I won't get it here at 3912 Drake Branch Road.
If I understand correctly, the hope is that if you've listed a mailing address with the city, they should be able to send mail to it and have it be received. I think that's the idea of having that there.
Hello?
But anyway, yes,
Hello,
we can hear
you
you.
hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Okay, I'm sorry.
No worries.
I tried to use the video and I couldn't do it. I tried to use the link, so I called in. I'm sorry. This is Joy Kimbrough.
Oh. Welcome, Councilmember
Hello?
Kimbrough.
Okay.
We were
Sorry
just
I'm
getting
late.
started.
I'm sorry. Okay.
Oh, no worries.
Okay.
Before we go any further, do you would you like to say a few words to get us started?
No, is NDOT here or is it just the community?
So I'm here representing NDOT, and then we've got several members of the community online as well.
Oh, okay. Okay. All right. Well, I want to thank you, NDOT. I appreciate it. You putting this together and everything. I asked before we even get started, because I've had more complaints in District 1 that whatever we do regarding the traffic calming, that we do not do those, what delineators? Am I saying that correctly?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, the white poles.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yes. We've had some real problems with those.
That's good to know. Thank you for letting us know.
Okay.
Great. Well, I can jump back in then and continue with the presentation. So next we're going to talk about.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I'm so sorry.
Oh, sure. Yeah, no,
I'm
please.
sorry. Okay.
Okay. So the toolkit that is at the traffic calming program's disposal consists of a lot of things. Kind of the first and the one that we use most frequently are vertical measures called speed cushions. So these work similar to speed bumps, but they're stretched out in order to target a speed of somewhere between 20 miles an hour and 25. So the important piece here is we're not looking for folks to slow down to really slow speeds. We're mainly looking for vehicles to go at or around the speed limit when they're traversing these. They're about 3 inches tall, and they're 6 feet wide strategically, so that larger emergency vehicles can traverse them a little more easily than smaller vehicles with narrower wheelbases. They do come in a variety of lengths, so we'll likely look around the context and try to be consistent with some of the other streets that have recently been approved for traffic calming. And as we have heard before, sometimes we have delineators alongside them to prevent people from driving around. But there are also ways that we can configure these so that those will not be necessary. So have heard that feedback, and we'll do whatever we can to make sure those aren't a part of the design. Really similar to speed cushions are speed tables. They're made out of the exact same materials, but they stretch all the way across the road, and they can be a little bit longer. These, however, don't have the advantage of affecting emergency vehicles less than cars. So typically we'll only use these in areas where we've got kind of a weird width, or we have reason to believe they won't need to be traversed a bunch of times in emergencies. I mentioned that these are used more frequently than other measures in the traffic calming program, and that has everything to do with how effective they are. So NDOT has conducted a small study in 2023 to kind of gauge against national research that these vertical style measures work. Over a sample size of 6 projects, we found that the average speed on all of the streets came down from 31 miles an hour to 22, and the 85th speed came from 37 all the way down to 25. So Enchanted Circle is experiencing kind of an even higher 85th percent speed than 37, that'd be 42. Even with that being the case, we are optimistic that with the installation of vertical measures, speeding could come down to a pretty reasonable amount. Now, there are cases where vertical measures aren't the best solution, or maybe a constraint is in place that we can't use vertical measures. And in those cases, we'll do things such as radar feedback signs. This is a sign that's powered by the sun and flashes the speed that you're going as you approach it. And it's usually underneath a speed limit sign. So you can kind of compare, whether or not you're going an appropriate speed. These have an average speeding reduction of 6 to 7 miles an hour. We don't necessarily know if that's indefinite or not. They don't physically affect any vehicles, so if somebody did wish to continue speeding, they would be able to. It's not like a sign that enforces anything, or it certainly isn't like writing anyone tickets. It's just kind of there for the driver's information. We can also do narrowing on some roads. So if there was a lot of extra pavement, maybe the lanes were really wide, we'd be able to paint some white stripes on the edges of the road to narrow it up and make it feel a little more claustrophobic. That can induce slower speeds just by sort of affecting the driver's psychology. Another advantage is it can increase the comfort for pedestrians. You might imagine if you were walking on the side of the street, it could feel a little better to have a line saying where you're supposed to be and knowing that a car is likely driving, on the other side of that line. Again, this is not a measure that like physically affects any drivers. It's more a mental game, but it is a measure that can have some effect. On really wide intersections, we sometimes propose bulb outs. That's where we take intersections with a lot of extra pavement and narrow them from the outside in. Up in the top left is a pretty extreme example where we've painted narrower turning radii, added those flexible delineators that were mentioned earlier to make sure people don't just drive over the paint, and then included some walking paths to connect each of the corners of those sidewalks there. They shorten the pedestrian crossing distance, so that's one pedestrian benefit. You can imagine if you were walking all the way across that pavement, it would take quite a bit longer, and you may be a little more nervous about conflicting with the vehicle, where if the distance is only 20 or 22 feet, you've got a little bit less to worry about. In neighborhoods with a lot of street parking, they can also enhance the visibility if anyone is observed to be parking too close to the corners. On wider roads, we can do something called chicanes. That's where we kind of zigzag the center line of the street back and forth. That slows vehicles just by forcing turning maneuvers. It's kind of horizontal based traffic calming measures. This can affect on-street parking by reducing, the length of space available for parking. And it does take up a little more room than we have to work with here on Enchanted Circle. So we're likely going to propose a design with other options than this. And lastly, we occasionally do traffic circles on really large intersections. These are often somewhat hard to fit in and still allow for all of the turning movements that are necessary. So we'll see these sometimes, but not incredibly often on streets like Enchanted Circle. Any questions on the tools themselves? The next slide is going to be the concept that we have drafted up, but it is important to remember that we're not committed to this necessarily. It's more just something that we can talk to, ask you all about, get your thoughts, so that when we go to do this design, we've got a pretty good idea of what you all want.
Ben, I'll ask you again. You got a pretty good idea. How did you get that idea? Did you do a survey?
So do you mean
And if you did, I didn't get it. Why I did not get it?
Okay, so I will put the concept on the screen. We have a survey that is open right now, so you can log on to it online. Yes. So before this meeting's over, we're going to look at the QR code and the website that you can go to access the survey and fill it out. Tell us what you want, what you don't want, and we'll get that before the design is complete. So we've got a draft of the design.
Well, that's good, but I'm gonna be very honest. I've said in one meeting, approximately a year ago, when we was talking about Drake Branch Road and West Hamilton, and I raised some concern at that point. Why do I have to go over at least 10 bumps to be able to go through 2 or 3 blocks, to go from 3912 Drake Branch Road, which is the mailing address, of 4321, which is the map parcel number address, to Clarksville Highway at West Hamilton? My question is, are we putting too many, commas in the street?
Well, I'll go ahead and address how I would design a traffic calming project and kind of what the intent is. I wasn't the person who designed Drake's Branch or West Hamilton, but we do use a pretty consistent methodology, so it ought to apply. Basically, vertical measures are intended to be spaced such that vehicles don't have the opportunity to get up to dangerous speeds in between the measures. So the hope is that we would drive between 25 and 30 miles an hour for the duration of the street.
I know the theory, but can I ask another question? Rather than a survey, could you have a community meeting and the people in the community come and express their opinion?
Yeah, that's why we're here tonight.
And we have the council lady, I see she's on, and I think she could help coordinate that.
Yes, sir.
Can you all hear me?
Yes, Christopher.
Great. Mm-hmm.
Well, so what I can do is kind of talk through what we're looking at here, what we might consider as alternatives, and then I would love to hear more questions, comments before we move on to talking about the next steps in the project. So as I mentioned, we've tried to be deliberate about the spacing here as we move from south at Hydesdale Lane to north. We were able to fit in one set of speed cushions on the block between Hydesdale and Drake's Branch, 2 sets between Drake's Branch and Drake's Hill. We avoided this curve for visibility concerns, And then there's a pretty large hill in between there that we were also working around. Between Drake's Hill and Kings Lane, there are room for 3. That was also where we were kind of working around some grade. So we didn't have as many options for placement as I'd hoped. And then we've got 2 in between Kings Lane and Golden Hill Drive. Now you can see I've placed a stop icon in both places along Enchanted Circle where there's an intersection where we stop. There actually is not one of those at Golden Hill, so that's why this cushion is so close to this intersection. But there is some room for flexibility there. Another thing that I've posted on here for the sake of discussion is bulb outs at the intersection of Enchanted Circle and Drake's Branch Road. Now, so far, we've heard some feedback that at the very least, the white delineators associated with those are not desired. But I would love to hear anyone else's thoughts about that or other ideas that you may have.
Now you raised the question of Drake Branch Road and Enchanted Circle, right?
Yes, sir.
And what was that question? Because see, I live on that corner.
So one idea,
if I walk out, if I drive into my driveway, I drive in off of an Enchanted Circle. But if I walk out to my mailbox, I walk out to Drake Branch Road.
got it.
And,
Well, I will go back and we'll take a look
so what?
at. So right now on the screen, we're showing the slide for bulb outs. Basically, that is what we're considering doing at the intersection of Drake's Branch and Enchanted Circle. So what you have
Okay, but
is
now there is an existing one directly in front of my house. Well, not quite at Enchanted Circle, but it's in front of my house at this point in time. Now, what are you saying you're going to put on Enchanted Circle at that intersection?
So we're going to go ahead and take a look at the street ourselves later this week to see what the latest state of everything is. What we are considering is some bulb outs where we narrow the intersection because right now it's pretty wide. So the paint and delineators that you see on the screen.
I would like to come back and ask if you would consider with the council person corporation to have a community meeting so we can sit down and take a hard cold look at it. Because what I hear you saying is we're going to go ahead and do it anyway. And that to me is not getting community input.
Yeah, we are more than happy to have a second meeting. This is the first of what could be 2. So that's just fine.
No, I want a meeting in person.
Yeah, these can be virtual or they can be hybrid. Yes, Christopher.
Oh, could we have it at the
What I would like to say
library?
is that in relation to the cushions or speed bumps, the paint lines aren't going to do anything. I am in favor of the
Right.
cushions because I have difficulty just getting up on Enchanted Circle from my driveway. The people that live on the street are not the problem. It's the idiots that think they can drive through any way they wish. When you put these cushions down, don't put them down at the beginning of the street and Kings Lane. You need to bring it in somewhat on Enchanted Circle. That way, the idiot will think everything's okay and probably whip it up to about 55, and all of a sudden the speed bump is there. You do one or 2 things, burn up your brakes, or you're going to tear your suspension out, which I have absolutely no problem with. We need the speed cushions. No disrespect to anyone that's here at this meeting. That's
Well,
it.
thank you so much for sharing, Christopher. I definitely cannot design something that we worry about being unsafe. So we'll probably disperse them a little more evenly than looking to surprise anyone.
I do understand that, but you got to discourage them some kind of way.
Yeah, we completely agree. Definitely.
And unfortunately, we that live on the street are going to have to live with the speed cushions. And that's just way life goes. And I'm
Yep.
glad to meet you, Council Lady Kimbrough.
I'm glad to meet you. You're gonna have to come out to some of our meetings. We have
I
monthly
would like
meetings.
to. I would like
Okay,
to.
we have them every month.
All right.
Okay, I'm gonna try to get your information, if I can.
That would be fine.
Is his email in the email group that you sent out, Mr. Greaves?
That's a good question. I don't have that list in front of me right now. But
Okay.
Christopher, if you're able to put that in the chat, that would work. Or we can also hang out after the meeting and chit chat.
You all are dealing with a really old person here, and I'm not going to say I am that computer oriented.
Can you just take my phone number and call me after the meeting so I can get your information?
Yes. Let me get a pen.
Okay.
And
I'm Joy
lady.
Kimbrough. And my number is 615-753-4797.
All right. Thank you, Council
Okay.
Lady.
All right, thank you.
All right. Thank you all.
Thank you. Okay, so the next thing we have on our agenda is to move on to cover like how this project is going to proceed or not proceed based on the input from members of the community. But before we do that, is there anything else pertaining to this concept that you all would like to express beyond what we've heard so far?
Yes, I understand what Mr. Christopher is saying, and I also understand what Mr. Lane is saying. And I'm saying if something does have to go down, we do need, speed cushions. But I understand the importance of meeting in person because I've seen other traffic calming measures throughout District 1 that have been a disaster. A point there, like the one over near Timothy Park, right there at the intersection of Creekwood and Creekway, I believe. They made the you know how you make it narrow or whatever? They made the street too narrow. A lady's mailbox was knocked over. I had to actually call NDOT. They were very responsive in coming out and taking care of our mailbox, but it's just too narrow. It's almost where two cars can go down the street at the same time. And it actually created a somewhat more dangerous situation, at least at that intersection. Everybody on that street over there complains about it. Also, as to the poles, a lot of people don't know. If you go look in North Nashville, you'll see those delineated poles or whatever they are. They get old. They fade. You can knock them over, and it starts to look junky. We don't want to look junky, I don't think. So maybe if we need to get together and talk about the way we want it to look at the same time, making it more safe. Maybe we need to talk about that. But sometimes I think they go overboard with the traffic calming measures and it looks like a cluttered mess. I just want to say that.
Yeah, really appreciate the feedback. I'm curious.
Ms. Kimber, can y'all hear me real quick?
Yes.
I will say that the delineators in some of the places are really, really helpful because every morning I see the kids waiting for the school bus and the delineators, so they don't have to mess up somebody's yard and they don't got to wait in the street. So I know that over here they really, really like to have those. So I do hope you consider that, how much safer it is for the kids waiting for the school bus when you talk about maybe getting rid of them someday. So.
Well, I mean, I'm just telling you what I've seen, what I've observed. And I think some people who are kind of new to this area are trying to create bike lanes with those delineators and everything. I guess that's their purpose. I don't know. But I'm talking about the feedback I constantly get back. And we need to have a meeting, like Mr. Lane said about it. However, Mr. Christopher, I do agree, something needs to be done, but I just don't want them to go overboard. But we do need an in-person meeting where we can discuss it. We do real well coming together at our meetings, and we need to hear from a variety of people, and maybe not, just a few who are at every meeting, every traffic calming meeting in an attempt to get bike lanes. So anyway, if we could just all meet in person.
Yeah, understood.
Uh-huh.
I will reach out at some point after we've done our site visit with you to coordinate an in-person meeting. I'm more
Okay.
than happy to come and present the plans that we come up with based on the feedback we're getting tonight, as well as any feedback we get from the online survey. It is probably worth noting that it's very, very rare for a traffic calming project to result in bike lanes. So that's not what's being considered here tonight, just to make that
Oh no, I
abundantly
didn't mean
clear.
you. I didn't mean
Okay,
you. I'm sorry. I did not mean you at all on that. Okay.
understood.
I'm sorry if that's the way it sounded. No, I did not mean that. And NDOT has been very accommodating when I've reached out.
That's good to hear. Okay, well, why don't we talk about that next meeting? I'll kind of do a little overview of the project flow as a whole. Of course, we started with an application where residents requested traffic calming be installed. We reviewed the prioritization and selection process that ended in March. We're here tonight virtually at our first neighborhood meeting that was advertised through mailers, where we're talking about the program as a whole and kind of brainstorming what our design might be. So next, we're going to do a field review. So come out to Enchanted Circle in person, take some measurements, make sure we fully understand what's going on the street, and then spend a little bit of time, taking the feedback that we've gotten and coming up with a more specific design. It sounds like we do want a second neighborhood meeting, so that'll happen once the design is complete. We'll kind of review what we've got, recap what we heard from the survey and what we heard tonight, as well as discuss any other ideas that we might want to see before the design is finalized. Now, once the design has been completed, we'll post the plans online and then send out more mailers that start the ballot. We'll also have that information available online. So if you do want to weigh in, yes or no, you'll submit that via a form on Nashville's website. That period is open for 6 weeks, and the project will only proceed if 2/3 or more of respondents say they do want the traffic calming to happen. So, it would take 2 out of 3 or that proportion for a project to be built. Should that happen and it is a successful ballot, we'll order materials and then get y'all into the construction queue. It'll be a little while between the ballot and the project being finalized. That's just the nature of how many we have in the backlog right now. But we're thinking around 8 to 10 months is the timeline there. So because we've got another meeting scheduled between now and sending that ballot out, we don't need to spend a lot of time digging into the details, but I'm happy to take any questions that anyone has about like how that works if y'all are curious. But we'll review that in more detail at the second meeting. Got it. This is the ballot zone, or so this is the list of properties that whose owners were sent the mail for this meeting, and they're the ones who will receive a ballot in the mail. We do, as I mentioned before, send this to the owner's address that's listed with the Nashville Register of Deeds. That's the best way that we have to contact the owners of these properties. But if you believe you should have received a ballot and did not, you're more than welcome to reach out to us and ask for your code. We're happy to look you up and give you the information you need to submit your vote. So that's the content that I've got. On the screen right now is my contact information, the email address for the NDOT team that works with us on administering these projects. And then off to the right is the QR code and website for the online survey that's live right now. So if you scan the code or type engage.Nashville.gov/traffic-calming, you'll be able to navigate to Enchanted Circle's survey. That's where you can submit comments, reach out to us via email, or flag specific concerns that you have along your street. So we're collecting feedback that way, as well as the meeting tonight and the upcoming meeting, that we'll get scheduled pretty soon here. So with that, does anyone have any other questions about this project as a whole or next steps? Really anything goes.
I do. So, Mr. Greaves, for my community meeting, I'm going to schedule a community meeting. Do I need to just follow up with you?
Yes, please.
Okay.
If
Oh,
you
yeah,
have a
because
time.
you'll be coming out. I'm sorry. Okay, yes. Okay.
Yeah. We're happy to come and like present as a part of a larger meeting, or if you'd
Okay.
like to have a standalone one just for this street, whatever works is okay with us.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Mr. Lane, call me tonight.
So what?
Will you give me a call tonight? I need to talk to you
Oh,
about
okay.
something else. Okay.
Okay.
All
Yeah,
right.
I want to say thank you for the presentation, sir,
You
and
did a good
Mr.
job.
Lee. And like I said, I live on that corner, and I travel over 10 every day to get to work and to get back from work, and I have questions about it. So, but thank you for the for this meeting and the process we will go into the future.
Of course. Thank you all for attending. Really appreciate your presence and your feedback. And I'll look forward to our next meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Goodbye.
You too.
Oh, shit.
Bye-bye.